Ouchies Batreps, for that fresh, crisp, clean feeling that you can only get from Ouchies Batreps. Okay, so it's the third round of the tourney, and I've got exactly 3 points. This isn't looking so great. I'm bottoming the pack. As a matter of fact, there's only one other person that's below me. He's my brother. So, we're revisiting our strategy. Our new goal is to not do as bad as him. Don't mind the footage from the Eastern Front. Everything's going swell for the Schwere Panzer Company. Though there are some things that I am doing that are textbook examples of what a heavy tank company shouldn't be doing, I think this should put the nail in the coffin that the heavy tank companies aren't as scary as they initially look. My third opponent for the tourney is running a fairly interesting list. It's a Lend-Lease Sherman list run by the Russians. It's got 2 platoons, or at least it'll be 2 platoons of 8 tanks. It's, pretty straightforward. But he did have some crazy Soviet tank commanders of some form or fashion in there that had a literal book of rules. I actually took a picture of his army list thinking it was his army list, but it was actually all the different things that those particular tank commanders could have done. It boiled down to one of them being a 2IC of sorts that could take company morale checks, and he ignores hen and chicks on his own. It's the gist of it. It was actually a much more long-winded way of saying it. Now, recording your games actually causes an interesting phenomenon that I've actually enjoyed ever since I started doing this, in which that you can go back and relook at what you're doing, and you can actually analyze what you're doing and realize where the mistakes you're making, what you could have done better, and sometimes you can see different things like just rules that you're getting flat out wrong that you don't notice when you actually start the game. There's going to be a point later on that I'm going to go into vast discussion about this, and I'd love to be wrong, but it's just one of those things. It doesn't reflect on him in any way. It doesn't reflect on me because I sure didn't catch it. But it's interesting to discuss for the sake of this bat rep. You'll see it when I talk about it. Now, regarding the things that you can learn, the last game that I played was, man, if that was a bar fight, I would have been knocked out flat cold. It was just textbook of everything you shouldn't do, and I can probably make a video in and of itself on just how to run a Schwere Panzer list and then just do it wrong. And I would use that entire bat rep as an example of everything you don't do. But the interesting point about that is that I learned vastly more rewatching what I did. It's very plainly clear. I mean, I knew I lost the last time because I got overwhelmed in a very few points, but I knew that was going to happen, and I let them still get on my flanks. But there's some little things, things that are advantageous to the German list that you won't find anywhere else, such as taking advantage of the Stormtrooper move that I just didn't do in that game. But on to the game. We both placed our objectives far apart from each other to help split our forces. I put some Gert Panzer Pioneers up on the north end to help contest the objective, while I put the vast majority of my tanks on the southern end to take on his initial placement of his Tankovy, that 8-strong tank stand down on the south end, while he's got another 8-strong tank stand in the center of the map. He also diverted 3 tanks, I do believe, on the northern end of the map, just so that he can sit there and again contend the northern objective from the infantry he very clearly saw me place up there. It's a smart move, but he decided he wasn't going to move them. He placed them there, detached them from the command, and just moved everything else. Do you already see where I'm going with this? He swings the Soviet parade worth of tanks down along the wood line that I can't see behind. He was very careful to measure all that out so that I wouldn't be able to see him, and then he ducks all the other tanks up behind the church so that I'd have to come out and see them. Wise moves all around, because I will just open them up like cheap tin cans. I, on the other hand, have started using the village in a form of defilade. What you don't see is actually that there's 2 tanks over in the bushes at the far left of the map. I kind of regret not pulling the camera out just a little bit, because you can't see them, and you can't see the Gert Panzer Pioneers on the northern end of the map making a rush for the woods, because they are going to try to assault the northern objective. The tank at the middle of the board is actually double ace. Got rapid reload and all shots count. Couldn't get a better matchup than that. He's controlling the center board in such a eloquent way that he has completely ignored the center. He's terrified of it, and he wants to throw everything against the other 3 Tiger tanks. Uh, It's an interesting call. Now my opponent today, he actually measures everything out very meticulously, and it's a very interesting practice. We talked about this after the game because while it makes it very clear to him where his tanks can go and where they can and can't do, it also paints very clearly to me what he's thinking about and where he thinks he can go and what he can't do. Now, by this time, I've actually pre-measured some of this stuff, and I know what I need to be afraid of. And I've already got it out in my head that he has to take 3 turns worth of movement out to me before he can get to a flank shot. And he's just now realizing. As a matter of fact, a lot of my tanks went to ground last turn because they didn't have a shot. And he's starting to realize that he can't hurt me at range. And it was kind of an epiphany for him that between Hen and Chicks, being veteran, gone to ground, it was, I think, a 7+. And also shooting at range made it more difficult every now and then. But he continues to charge out through the open fields to get towards the tanks. Again, you have to be aggressive, especially against a tank army that has such few units. And his air support does manage to come in. I got a little cocky with that. I put 2 tanks right next to each other, and his template manages to catch both of them and bails one of the tanks. Wouldn't you know it, it's the tank without a dedicated Tiger Ace die. He was just bad luck to start. He bails out and he decides he's not going to get back in. I didn't show enough courtesy to give him his own Tiger Ace die, and now he's not showing the courtesy to get back in. But remember how prior I told you that his pre-measuring and laying of everything made it very clear what he was thinking? Well, now you can see what I was thinking when I saw that. He was assuming I would never move. So I move the Tiger tanks out and I start getting all nice clean shots on those tanks in the center, popping one after another. Even the guy along the center had nothing better to shoot at and decided to start popping round after round into those poor Sherman tanks. They did not have a chance. Now again, regarding rules, if anything, I am always wrong, but you remember that detachment that was left on the northern end to contend the objective? It occurs to me now, and only because I saw the Flames of War forum post about it, that I went ahead and checked the rules and realized that this might be the case in this game as well, that we might have done something wrong, because he's been moving that same unit across the board. Now, I don't know if there was something that we might have done wrong. Maybe there was an independent character that could have led them or something, but he ends up moving them across the center of the board, and I don't think he could have been able to do that. I say that because on page 252 of the rulebook it says, under Hen and Chicks, if a platoon command team moves in the movement step, all of the tank and transport teams in its platoon must move as well. And on page 66 it says, when moving, a team may either move as to be in command at the end of the movement step or remain in place without moving. And again, on the same page regarding moving when out of command, it says, when a team that was out of command moves, it must do so as to be in command or as close to being in command as possible. And coupled with the Hen and Chicks rule, that tends to imply that he couldn't have split them up. Just as soon as the moment that the center element moved, those tanks guarding the northern objectives should have moved as well. It doesn't really change how the game would have played, and I think it's perfectly fine. You should play the setting, not the system. I just figure they might have, got lost in translation and decided to stick around and drink the vodka instead of follow the commander up towards those King Tigers. I wouldn't have blamed them. But on with the game. Despite all the losses that the center element had taken, they passed morale and managed to fight on despite facing down 3 Tiger tanks that are literally yards away from them. In the meantime, the southern element swings around towards the southern objective, which is actually in the wheat field just to the left of the camera, and they are contesting it. This is actually pretty horrific. I've got to start moving those King Tigers back around and start pushing those Sherman tanks off the objective, or the Germans will lose on turn 3, no less. Even the remains of the center element decides to go tango with the Tigers as they clear into the center of the village right in between a bunch of Tiger tanks. I guess it's a smart move considering I have to start choosing who I'm going to face, and I'm certainly going to face the gaggle of tanks that are holding the objective instead of facing down those 2 little Sherman tanks. But it doesn't look like it's going to be much of an issue because his tanks open up with their 76mm guns, and they managed not to kill just one, but they killed 2 Tiger tanks, killing the one that bailed out, never got back in, and killing another one with a long-range shot. I have nothing that can contest the objective anymore, and the infantry on the northern end of the map can't possibly take on those tanks up there. It is a Soviet win, 6-1. It was a good game, good fight, and I look forward to fighting him again. And that's been an Ouchies Batrep. Thanks for watching. I actually finished the tourney with 4 points, so Operation Don't Suck As Bad As My Brother was a complete success because he came in with 3.